It's actually a pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Astro Teller. If you are a couple looking for your child perhaps to go into engineering, Astro would not be a bad name to choose to encourage that predilection. But of course, it's a family steeped in engineering and in excellence in thought. A grandfather on one side, a Nobel Prize-winning economist. Grandfather on the other side, co-inventor of the hydrogen bomb. So it's like, take that, Nobel Prize-winning economist. But Astro stands in his own right. He holds degrees in computer science, heuristic computation, artificial intelligence, and aside from teaching at Stanford for a while, he went off to found some companies. They've included a leading wearable body monitoring company, Body Media Inc., and Cerebellum Capital Inc. He's a co-founding CEO and current director, a hedge fund management firm whose investments are continuously designed, executed, and improved by a software system based on techniques from statistical machine learning. Both fascinating and somewhat terrifying. So with that kind of expectation, I'm so pleased to welcome up to the stage Dr. Astro Teller.
Thanks for having me. So, Professor Simon Newcomb, who's heard of him? Not many people. I'm going to tell you why. He was really sure that human-driven, powered, heavier-than-air flight was impossible. He was really sure that it was impossible. In fact, he proved that it was impossible. And the proof was right. So far, it sounds like we should know about him, right? He was a very respected scientist and mathematician of the 19th century, and he had a big following at the time. In retrospect, we can see that this was a spectacular failure of imagination on his part. Particularly since while he was writing his proof, there were these birds flying back and forth outside his window. And his proof was right for any reasonable assumptions about fuel energy density and engine efficiency. But it assumed a non-turbulent flight. So you were going to bat down the air molecule. You hit it, and with some kind of angle of attack, you make the air molecule go down, and so your heavier-than-air vehicle goes up. He's right. That doesn't work. But Bernoulli's principle in the air, turbulent flight, is what those annoying counterexamples were doing going back and forth outside his window. So it's not that he was stupid. He was smart. He was very smart. But failures of imagination attack all of us. So to use another example, the people who were busy telling everyone who would listen that there was no way, no how, never going to happen, a cable running all the way under the Atlantic Ocean to connect New York and Paris, if you think that's going to happen, you've never been there. No way it's going to happen. And they thought they could prove it. They weren't the dumb people. They were the smart people. They were the people who could actually do the math on how much that cable was going to probably have to weigh to be strong enough to withstand the currents in the ocean. Right? But they didn't figure on certain things like how light you could make it, how flexible you could make it, how tough you could make it, and that you could take it out and then sort of append to your thing. Because the problem is like 100,000 tons or more seemed like a lot at that time to put on a single ship. Way too much. But you could take it out and append it in sections. So eventually, the fact was, it was valuable enough, smart people figured out how to do it, and the people who bet against the transatlantic cable lost big time. So there's no shame in having an imagination failure. We all have them. It's hardwired into us. It's a basic trap of human psychology. So what happens is we believe in our brains. We really believe in our imaginations. You don't mean to, but you do. So if somebody asks you to think about something and you can't come up with a solution, so I say, what would you do with 1,000 times the compute power in your phone? and you think about it, and you're like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like 1,000 times, maybe 10. If you can't think of something, your imagination tells you that that's because there isn't something there. Now, we all want to believe that we're, like everyone else maybe has these problems, but we don't have them, right? We're the smart people. No, it doesn't work like that. You have imagination failures, and I do too. We all do. Think back to the last magic trick that you saw. It was like a really great magic trick that made your mouth hang open. I mean, seriously, think of one. What happens, you're conscious of part of it. You're trying to figure out what the trick is, right? Your brain is going, oh wait, would that work? No, that wouldn't work. You're trying to come up with a solution. What you don't realize, the reason you get that tingling sense of wonder inside you when you watch that magic trick is because your subconscious is telling you, when you can't think of how to do the magic trick, it's telling you that the reason you can't is because there is no rational solution. Ergo, it must be magic. If your brain wasn't messing with you that way, it would be a lot less fun to go to the magic show, right? But that's a way to see how powerful your imagination is and how much your brain trusts your imagination. If you can't think of it, it doesn't exist. It's kind of brutal. Now, I'm not saying that all failures of imagination are bad. I personally can't think of how to make a time machine, but that doesn't make it more likely that a time machine can be made just because I can't imagine it, right? And if I was a betting man, I would bet against a time machine being built in my lifetime. So I don't believe in everything, and we can't just wholesale believe that everything is possible. That's clearly not functional. It's also, impossible is a funny word, because there are things which sure looked impossible and turned out to be possible, but not really in the way we meant it. So alchemists worked for a long time. One of the classics of impossibles was turning lead into gold, right? You can do it. You need a cyclotron to do it, but if you smash enough neutrons into that lead, you can turn it into gold. It's just, because it's so expensive to do it, you get so little gold out the other side, it doesn't really have that something for nothing characteristic that the alchemists are hoping for. But you can turn lead into gold. On the other hand, there are things that are actually impossible, like a perpetual motion machine, but that we enjoy every day, practically speaking, as though they were perpetual motion machines. So a paddle wheel in the water, or photovoltaics. I mean, there you have this solar panel, and it just kicks out energy all the time. It doesn't use up anything, right? It's because we've closed the system. We don't include the sun in the system, right? So from our perspective, it is a perpetual motion machine. So what are we supposed to do as entrepreneurs, as innovators, as business leaders? We want our companies to be skating to where the puck is going to be, not to where it is right now. We want our organizations to keep the innovation engine white hot. But we can't just believe everything is possible. That by itself is not operationalizable. What are we supposed to do? So I've been at Google 18 months now, and one of the things, I think the thing that's impressed me the most about Google is I think Google has it right on this particular front. Google has built a culture to keep imagination failures at bay. And it's really kind of crystallized my thinking about this, so I thought I would share a couple of these things. One or two are examples from Google, and some of them are just things that Google's behaviors and culture here has helped me to understand, and I thought you might enjoy. So, self-driving cars. Many of you probably know that Google is working on the problem of self-driving cars. That by itself is a completely audacious goal, right? But Google is actually going to do impossible like one better. Because most of the commercial work out there makes one or the other, or sometimes both, of the following two restricting assumptions. The first is that the cars are like packed together on the highway so that they can rely on the one in front of them doing or not doing particular things. Google's not making that assumption. And the other one is like, let's put magnets in the road and kind of like there'll be sort of special signals at every traffic light in the world that'll sort of tell us whether it's a red light or a green light. No, we're not assuming that. That's like another level of impossible on top of our first level of impossible. And until very recently, like a year ago, reasonable, smart people were saying that this wasn't technically feasible. It was impossible. There are people, even today, who say that for other reasons, logistics or business reasons, that this may in fact still be impossible. And I would suggest that this is a failure of imagination. Why? Well, think back to Simon Newcomb, right? He had those little annoying counterexamples flying back and forth outside his window. But he didn't care. Scratch, scratch, scratch with his quill on his parchment, writing out his proof at Johns Hopkins that you couldn't actually fly. It's understandable. In retrospect, we see sort of how that could have happened. But really, in the face of that counterexample flying back and forth outside the window, it's going to happen. Reasonable people could have argued at the time how long it would take to happen. But you would have hoped, we would all hope looking backwards, like, really, dude? Come on. And that's why you don't know his name, is because he got that thing wrong. Right? We have the same thing here. You are looking at a walking counterexample to the people who say it's impossible. I am a wetware robot. Not even a very sophisticated one, honestly. So, right, I've got a computer, I've got 2 video cameras, I've got 2 microphones, I've got a couple of actuators. I can drive. My fiancée thinks I'm like not the best in the world at it, but I do an okay job. If I can do it and you can all do it, why can't we automate it? I'm not trivializing the work that's been done so far or the hard work that still is to come. But now that I put it that way, it does sort of seem like it's gonna happen. And yet, it wasn't that long ago that it really did seem like science fiction, like people were kidding themselves if they said that. That's a failure of imagination, when you can see something in retrospect, but beforehand it doesn't look possible, right? So, how do we break these patterns that we have? How do we see past this? I've suggested now a generalization. Right? We need these mantras to help us get through these failures of imagination. How do we, if I say that our mantra, or one of our mantras could be, if a human can do it, let's automate it. That sounds pretty audacious by itself. But I think it's a worthy North Star to have. And it is one of the things which Google has just bought into wholesale and to its continual benefit. It's a good mantra. Let me give you another example. Location accuracy. So 30 years ago, if you had tried to make an argument, you're sitting with your friend at the bar, and you say, you know, I heard that there were just these satellites put up last week by the US military, and it's going to take a little while, but it's going to be huge consumer business to know where you are within 25 meters. There'll be thousands of companies using this information. And stuff in your pocket. No. Right? That would have been a very hard argument to make and get anyone to believe you on 30 years ago. 15 years ago, not everyone agreed, but lots of people could sort of see that it was going to happen. And today it's a done deal. Right? So, what about the next layer? 2.5 meter accuracy. So this is starting to be possible to see where you are within 2.5 meters instead of 25 meters, and to be able to see indoors instead of out of doors. So a few years ago, even, that was still kind of science fiction, but now people can sort of start to see how maybe that's possible. People haven't finished their thinking about it. 15 years ago, if you had proposed 2.5 meter accuracy and said this is going to be huge, you would have had few takers on the other side, on your side. But today, people are like, okay, maybe I can come along with you. What if I told you we're going to do, not we, anyone could do 25 centimeter accuracy? Is that useful? How about 2.5 centimeter accuracy? I know how to build it. We're not building it, but I know how to build 25 centimeter accuracy. 2.5 centimeters, maybe even. But is that worth it? Have I hit your imagination failure point yet? You're like, I want to go with you, but I don't know. The generalization of this is that there are a set of things, like the cost of computation and the bandwidth between devices, There are things like that you may not think of in the same category, but like location accuracy, where we get better and better and better at doing these things over time as a society. And every time we get another radical step better in any one of these things, it always surprises us. Why does it always surprise us? You think we would have learned the first time or after the first 5 times, but we don't. When I tell you 1,000 times more computation in your phone, you'd think about it for 20 minutes and you still won't be able to come up with something that's like really needs 1,000 times more computation in your phone that we couldn't just send back to the servers. It doesn't matter. It will happen. Right? So the generalization is that, and I think Google has this right, you can bet into these trends. You don't have to know all of the value that will come on the other side because the past failures of imagination have been so strong, so routine among all of us, that you can just put a little Post-it note right there next to your desk. Don't bet against these trends, bet into them. And that's a way of preventing failures of imagination on that particular front. So another kind of failure of imagination, it's understandable, is that when people don't want something to happen, they think it's impossible. 2 classic examples. One would be like artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence just scares people. Not everybody, but many people. And as a result, one of the natural human reactions is to assume that it won't happen, because then you feel better, right? Another one is, what if I told you what your business does is about to, happen for free? Someone had figured out how to do it for free. You don't want that to be true, because then your business would be over. Your first reaction is not like, well, we better do it first. Your first reaction, everybody's first reaction is, I don't want that to be true. That's impossible. And of course, it's not necessarily the case that any one of your businesses is about to turn into a free service overnight. At the same time, just because you're afraid of something happening, just because, for example, you are afraid that computers will take some incremental tasks over from people, that's not a good bet. That's about as smart a bet as saying that I'm going to bet against mobile platforms, against mobile phones as a platform of the future because I don't think that teenagers should be texting so much. The fact that I think they shouldn't be texting has no bearing on whether or not it will be successful as a platform. So, brass tacks. What are some of these things? Let's see if we can name some of these mantras that we could install in ourselves to prevent these failures of imagination. So one of them is, pay attention to the counterexamples. Listen to the existence proofs. If you see birds flying by your window, for goodness sakes, don't write a proof that flying is impossible. So here's another one. If you think that something is impossible, double-check your work. Triple-check your work. Just because you've thought of 4 ways, I don't care, 40 ways of solving a problem, and they all don't work, that proves nothing. Nothing, unless you can prove that those are Not like Simon Newcomb thought he proved it. There was a hidden assumption there, right, about turbulent versus non-turbulent flight. You have to be able to prove that your ways are the only ways that would count. That's a hard proof to make. If you're afraid that something will happen, you need to check your reason for believing something is impossible. If you think something's impossible and you do that little mental check and you feel uncomfortable, that is an excellent reason to believe that you and the people around you have not been digging as hard as they might to find a way to make it happen. That's a good mantra to have. If you think that you're going to be smarter than the people who've come before you and tried to solve some impossible, or work harder than those people, or have more money than those people, you will lose. Those are bad bets. But you can be more open-minded than those people. History is a parade of people who succeeded where others had failed, and almost always, it's not because they were smarter or had more money. It's because they were more open-minded. This is the parable of Alexander the Great cutting the Gordian knot with his sword, where everyone else had been trying to untie it, right? And it just wasn't possible, so he cut it with his sword. And not every one of the impossibles that we can think of or that we care about is subject to the same kind of brute force solution. But the parable tells us that boldness and perspective shifting are a really important way to address these failures of imagination and keep them at bay. So the specific there is train your organization not just to beat its head against an impossible or run the other way, but to spend real energy trying to reframe the problem so that it's not impossible anymore. What are some other good ones? How about, so if I tell you that your phone is going to have 1,000 times the computation, let's go spend a lot of money to make that happen. And you're like, I don't know, Astro. Is that really going to be worth it? Like, that's a lot of money to make that happen. And in the end, like, what services are we really going to get out of that? And I don't know. I can't tell you. So then you're like, let's not do it. Try this trick on yourself. When you feel like you get stuck, imagine taking a factor 1,000 away from yourself instead of giving it to yourself. Imagine your phone having removed from it 99.9% of the power or the bandwidth or the computation. All of a sudden, it's totally useless. It's just a little brick in your pocket. It's funny. All of a sudden, that next factor 1,000 I just proposed seems a little bit more plausible than like 5 sentences before. That shouldn't be possible, but I didn't do a trick. That's just failures of imagination at work. You just have to see things differently or build up. You have to inoculate yourself against this human behavior to believe that it's not possible because you can't imagine it. Here's another one. People sometimes, I know this is weird, but they need permission to do the impossible. And sometimes in order to give them the permission, you have to trick them into doing the impossible. So pick something, seriously, pick something that your teams believe is impossible. They've told you specifically is impossible. Go back to them now, right after this conference, and tell them that you heard on the QT that your competitor has figured out a way to do that impossible thing, to make your service run 3 times faster at 1/3 the price. These same people who told you with an entirely straight face that it was impossible to do this just a week or 2 ago will come back to you 2 weeks later after you tell them this, and they will show you how to make it 20 times faster or at 1/20th the price. They will blow your mind. And they weren't just, wasting your time. They needed permission. They didn't believe it was possible, so they weren't working on it. Believing that something is impossible has this incredible blocking effect on our creativity. And you can release that in yourself, and you can release that in your teams. Sometimes you have to trick them to do it, but you can do it. So I'm going to give you a homework assignment now that I've given you one to give for your teams. I want each of you to spend the length of a single glass of wine tonight coming up with a failure of imagination that you have. Think of something that you believe is impossible or that you're behaving functionally as though it were impossible, as though it won't happen. Believe it's possible. What does that do? I mean, I'm asking you to pick something that's you not only believe is impossible, but that if it happened would actually be really valuable. Right? So like making a square circle, I'm not sure that that's very interesting. So pick something a little racier than that. If you believed it was possible, how would it be possible? If you believed it was possible, who would make it? Could you make it? Even if you couldn't make it, how could having the secret knowledge that it was going to happen arm you so you could take advantage of it? Like God whispering in your ear about tomorrow's news so you could bet on the stock market. This is the same sort of thing. Believing the right impossible things are not in fact impossible is like peeking into the future. So this is not rhetorical. I really want each of you to spend the length of a single glass of wine tonight and come up with something that you thought was impossible and decide that it's possible. We can't, as an organization, just believe everything is impossible. Believe everything is possible. That would make us completely non-functional as organizations. But you can create these mantras to keep those imagination failures at bay. You can decide what you believe ahead of time. So when those imagination failures come knocking, you can block them out. So let me tell you what I believe. I believe that if computers can do it, if humans can do it, that computers will eventually be able to do it also. I believe that there are trends which we have so often been wrong about, like the speed of computers and the value released when they get faster, a lot faster, or the bandwidth opportunities, or radical reductions in cost, or other things like location accuracy. I believe that these have tripped us up so many times, we need to stop playing the game of, can I think of what it would be good for, because if not, it must be good for nothing. And just believe that those things will come to us if we bet into them. And I believe, more generally, that if it doesn't actually violate a law of physics, things of sufficient value, of immense value, will ultimately be built. Maybe it'll take a while, but like turning lead into gold, it will happen. Alice says to the White Queen in Through the Looking Glass that you can't believe impossible things. And the Queen corrects her, saying, I dare say you haven't had much practice. When I was your age, I would do it always for half an hour a day. Why? There were times when I had believed 6 impossible things before breakfast. The risk to us as innovators is not that we don't grow up, but that we do. It's so easy, while we're in this rush to get smart and to get wise, to lose the skills that we had as children, to see things with fresh eyes, and to believe that almost anything is possible. I know it sounds overstated, but money is not what's holding us back. The laws of physics are not what's holding us back. Access to technical talent is not what's holding us back. It's our imaginations. So, get a jump on believing 6 impossible things before breakfast tomorrow morning. Believe one of them tonight. Thank you very much.
Astro, thank you so much. I imagine for those for whom believing impossible things is they're still in the beginning stages, over the glass of wine tonight, it doesn't have to be the first glass of wine, correct? It can be...
No, it's fine if you need to practice for the first glass, and then you'll get better with the second glass, and by the 4th glass,
so long
everything
as you're
will look
not
possible.
so hungover during breakfast,
Sure.
You can't believe any impossible things. And it's a very delicate balance to strike. So many questions, so little time, a law of physics that maybe only recently has been announced that can be bendable, such as Bernoulli's principle. If it's really so important, how can planes fly upside down? But that's a different discussion. I just want to invite you for a moment to tell us the story of your name.
I'm really tempted to make up a better story. I'm a little stuck for a made-up story. Okay, so I was applying to Stanford, and I applied to a number of schools, but Stanford had this little blank for nickname. And I didn't really have a nickname in high school. As a couple people, and they called me Astro, but it wasn't even a complimentary nickname. Nobody else called me Astro. I just didn't want to be the only loser applying to Stanford who didn't have a nickname. Just be careful, do all the things in the application, don't leave anything blank. So I wrote Astro in there, and someone, this was back when these things were still in paper, transposed these things when they typed them in. So by the time I got to Stanford, Astro was my legal name, and Eric was my nickname. And I was at Branner, the largest freshman dorm, so 180 new best friends were being introduced to me by my 22 RAs, who had all memorized my name and everybody else's name. And so they're like, hey, Bob, this is Astro. This is a socially really awkward moment to be like, actually, that's not really my name. It was like a typo. So then you're like, oh, nice to meet you, Bob. And 5 days later, everybody knows your name. It was like there was never a good time to change it, so it just kind of stuck. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.